Hello friends, the Core 5 or C5 gambit is Donald Trump's latest attempt to secure what every restless leader ultimately craves, a reserved seat in the history books, preferably under the heading World Order Architect. Having failed to bend institutions to his will the first time around, Trump now appears to be redesigning the furniture. If the world refuses to behave, the logic goes, perhaps it simply has too many chairs. Presented as hard headed realism, the Core 5 is less a theory of global stability than a confession of imperial fatigue. It quietly concedes what Washington once denied, and that is that the unipolar moment has passed, while theatrically insisting that America should still preside over the reckoning. By shrinking global governance to a hand-picked pentarchy, the C5 Core 5 offers Trump a way to bypass messy allies, tiresome norms, and inconvenient moral language, replacing them with the purer music of deal making among serious powers. This is not multilateralism reborn, it is multilateralism downsized. Five states, chosen for their capacity to disrupt rather than their commitment to order, are invited to manage a world they increasingly struggle to control. The rest are encouraged to trust the process, applaud from the sidelines, and accept that stability, like luxury seating, is a privilege. The irony is sharp. A project advertised as realism is powered by vanity. A scheme meant to tame chaos risks legitimizing it. And a president seeking historical gravitas may instead be remembered for proposing a global order that mistook exclusion for efficiency and power for wisdom. The C5 is not a solution to a broken world. It is a monument to the belief that fewer voices make history easier to write. The C5 concept has the unmistakable aroma of a thought that sounded brilliant in a closed room at a late hour among people exhausted by multilateralism and mildly irritated by allies. Reportedly surfacing from an early draft of the United States National Security Strategy, the Core 5 was not unveiled with fanfare so much as discovered, like an abandoned architectural blueprint proposing that world peace might be easier if managed by five very large landlords. The ambition is disarmingly neat. Instead of the cluttered chaos of the United Nations, the argumentative theatrics of the G20, or the moral earnestness of the G7, the world could be run by a compact council of the truly important. And which are these important countries? The United States, China, Russia, India, and Japan. Everyone else, presumably, can enjoy the benefits of stability without the burden of participation. This is not imperialism, we are told. It is efficiency. C5 is sold as realism, but it is realism of a particularly sentimental variety. It looks forward by looking backward, borrowing liberally from the concert of Europe while ignoring how that concert ended. As you know, the concert of Europe was a 19th century system of elite great power coordination that emerged after Napoleon's defeat in 1815 and the Congress of Vienna. Britain, Austria, Prussia, Russia, and later France agreed to consult one another regularly to preserve continental stability, prevent revolutions, and block the rise of any single dominant power. It was an informal, club like arrangement rather than a rule bound institution. premised on the belief that peace could be engineered if the strongest states managed European affairs collectively. The concert of Europe did succeed temporarily in preventing major wars among great powers, but only by suppressing nationalist aspirations, resisting social change, and freezing political realities, making its stability brittle and ultimately unsustainable. The assumption is that if the strongest states simply acknowledge one another's heft and sit down to negotiate, the world will calm itself out of gratitude. This is realism stripped of irony. It presumes that power, once recognized, becomes responsible. It assumes that rivalry mellows when given a conference badge. Above all, it believes that the problem with the current world order is not conflicting interests, domestic politics, or historical grievances, but excessive participation. The intellectual justification for C5 is multipolarity. America is no longer unchallenged. China has arrived. Russia refuses to retire. India has grown too large to be managed from the margins, and Japan remains indispensable. None of this, however, logically requires the invention of an exclusive pentarchy. Multipolarity does not demand fewer voices, it demands more careful coordination. Yet, C5 interprets multipolarity as a licensing agreement. Since power is concentrated, decision making should be concentrated too. This is less an analysis of the world as it is than a concession to impatience with the world as it insists on being. At the heart of C5 lies an almost touching faith in deal making. Put five powers in a room, reduce the number of microphones, remove moral language, and history will behave itself. The small table becomes a talisman against complexity. This is diplomacy imagined as real estate negotiation. Location, leverage, and silence matter more than norms. The irony is that the same administration, skeptical of bureaucracies, seems eager to invent a new one, only this time without rules, transparency, or accountability. It is a club, not an institution, which is precisely the point. The central contradiction of C5 is that it treats adversaries as if they were merely competitors waiting for recognition. The United States and China are locked in a structural rivalry. Russia is engaged in active military revisionism. India and China have unresolved border tensions. Japan's security concerns are directly linked to China's behavior. These are not misunderstandings waiting to be clarified over coffee. Placing these states in a privileged forum does not neutralize their conflicts, it elevates them. It converts disputes into bargaining chips and normalizes the idea that aggression can be traded, not deterred. In this sense, C5 risks becoming less a peace mechanism and more a market for geopolitical indulgences. For Europe, C5 is an awakening disguised as an insult. The continent that hosted the Cold War, built NATO, and supplied much of the normative architecture of the post 1945 order finds itself politely excluded from the new inner circle. Europe is welcome to support outcomes, finance reconstruction, and issue statements, just not to shape decisions. The predictable consequence is a renewed European obsession with strategic autonomy driven not by ambition but by anxiety. When your primary ally begins treating you as an optional accessory Independence becomes less a slogan and more a necessity. NATO will not disappear, but it may find itself running quietly in the background while strategic decisions are negotiated elsewhere. Collective defense remains sacred, but collective consultation becomes negotiable. An alliance that learns about major shifts after the fact does not collapse, it corrodes. Intentionally or otherwise, C5 introduces a hierarchy within Western security, those at the table and those waiting for the minutes or minutes as they call it. For much of the global south, C5 looks uncomfortably familiar. Five powers deciding what constitutes development or acceptable behavior is not a novelty. It is history with updated branding. The inclusion of India and China offers symbolic diversity, but symbolism does not eliminate asymmetry. The fear is not that C5 will fail, but that it will succeed on terms that prioritize great power convenience over regional consent. Stability delivered from above has a habit of expiring quickly once local realities reassert themselves. The United Nations will continue to exist, its charters intact and its debates televised. The G20 will continue to meet, issuing communiques dense enough to stun wildlife. Yet, if C5 becomes the venue where real trade offs occur, these institutions risk becoming ceremonial. Authority without influence breeds cynicism, and cynicism is corrosive to international order. Nowhere is the incoherence of C5 more evident than in the Indo Pacific. The United States spends years building Quad and AUKUS to balance China, reassure allies, and deter coercion, only to propose a forum where China sits as an equal partner shaping outcomes. Allies are left to wonder whether deterrence is policy or posture and whether alignment is rewarded or merely tolerated until the next great power understanding. India's reaction to C5 is best described as diplomatically non committal. There is prestige in being included, but there is peril in being constrained. India's strategic culture values autonomy above applause, and any forum that risks locking New Delhi into bargains involving China or Russia will be approached with ceremonial enthusiasm and operational caution. India will attend, listen, and hedge because hedging is not indecision, it is strategy. For Russia, C5 offers something sanctions and isolation could not, that is, recognition. Being treated as indispensable is itself a victory. Moscow would use the forum to legitimize its role, weaken European influence, and extract concessions where possible. However, commitments would remain flexible. The attraction of C5 for Russia lies not in constraint but in leverage. China will view C5 as both opportunity and trap. Recognition as a peer power is welcome. Constraints disguised as cooperation are not. Beijing will test the forum carefully, extracting status while resisting any attempt to bind its strategic ambitions. Participation will be enthusiastic when interests align and procedural when they do not. The most generous interpretation of C5 is that it could reduce miscalculation among major powers. The most likely outcome is that it shifts instability elsewhere, exporting uncertainty to those excluded from the room. Short term calm purchased through elite bargains often produces long term resentment. History is unkind to orders that confuse power with consent. C5 is an idea that mistakes exhaustion for wisdom. It responds to a complex world not by engaging it more deeply, but by shrinking participation. It promises speed, clarity, and control, but offers them at the cost of legitimacy, trust, and institutional coherence. Finally, C5 may function as a mirror rather than a solution, reflecting a world where power speaks loudly, listens selectively, and mistakes silence for agreement. The world has seen such arrangements before. They are rarely remembered for their stability and often remembered for what followed. In case you have liked my video, please do like, subscribe, comment and share. Thank you.